Welcome back. So far, we learned lot of capabilities and features of delta tables. Now in this lecture, we want to learn delta table schema validation capability. Delta tables were designed with an thought in the mind that delta table will store structured data, and structured data always comes with a predefined strict schema. So there are some additional schema validation capabilities built inside the delta table. So in this lecture, we will try to understand what are those schema validation capabilities and understand them. So let's start. Let me go to my workspace, and in my home directory, I have set up a notebook for schema validation. We'll come to the notebook. The code is already written here because all the code that we are going to use here is simple enough, mostly Spark SQL and some data frame API code. So I'm assuming that you already know the code, so I'm not gonna type that here. So let's do the cleanup before we start anything, and then we will do some setup. So basically what I'm doing, I'm setting up a small simple delta table with just 3 columns: ID, first name, last name. ID is integer and first name and last name are string. And we want to understand how schema validation capability of delta table works. So for schema validation, we'll have to understand few basic things before we talk about schema validation. What is schema validation? It is as simple as that when you try to insert records in an existing delta table, the delta table will validate the data type, column names, all those schema details of incoming data. So if the incoming data, schema of the incoming data matches with the target table wherever you are trying to insert, it will allow you to insert new records. But if there are any discrepancies, if schema of the incoming data does not match with the target table, it should raise an schema validation error. And the point is that schema validation comes into play when you try to insert records into an existing data table. That's the time when schema validation triggers. And how many ways we can insert data into a delta table? You can use insert statement, Spark SQL insert statement. You can use insert overwrite statement, Spark SQL's insert overwrite statement. You can also use merge statement, merge when not matched, insert, right? So merge statement also allows you to insert new data into an existing table. So you can use merge statement, and you can also use data frame APIs, save as table method with append mode, which will insert data into an existing table. So these are 4 ways we can insert new data into an existing table. And what are the schema validation scenarios? There are 3 scenarios I have listed here. The first one is column matching approach. So when you try to insert a new data set into an existing delta table, the column names should match, or maybe column matching can work by column position. So how delta table works, we will try to understand how the column matching is validated by the delta table. The second scenario is you are inserting some new column. So for example, you have a table with 10 columns, but when you are inserting new records, you are inserting 11 columns or 12 columns. So what happens with the new columns? So that's another scenario where schema validation will trigger. The last scenario is data type mismatch. So if you have a delta table, you have, let's say, 10 columns, all columns are defined with a proper data type, and you are trying to insert new records into those tables, those columns. What if the data type mismatches? So that's another schema validation scenario. How delta table works in those scenarios, we will try to understand. So let's start with the first scenario where you are trying to insert data into an existing table using the insert statement. And for insert statement, we will try to understand these scenarios. So here is an example. We already have a people table already created here. I've created this people table. There are 3 columns: ID, first name, last name. And now I'm trying to insert some new records into this people table. So what I'm doing, I'm reading people.json file, and from that file I'm building a select statement which will insert data into this table, but I'm using different column names. The select statement comes with ID, F name, L name, 3 columns, but names are different. The table has got ID, first name, last name. So we have a difference in column names. What will happen? What is going to happen? So let's try running it and we will see the results. It worked. I was able to insert 4 records into this table. Despite of the fact the column names are not matching. Column names are different. In the target table, column name is first name, but in the source, column name is F name. But it worked. So conclusion is, with the insert into a statement, column names are matched by the position. Columns are matched by the position, not by the column name. So conclusion is, column matching by position in the insert statement. Matching names are not mandatory. But this has a potential problem, right? What if you are inserting date of birth here and phone number here, right? The date of birth will go into the first name and phone number will go into the last name. So this approach has a potential to corrupt your data, because schema validation in the data table is not there in place for matching the column names. As long as data types are matched, it will allow you to insert it. So be aware with that fact. The next scenario is, for the insert statement, what if we have got a new column? So in the same people DT table, I am reading data from the people JSON again and inserting ID, F name, L name and DOB. But in the people table, we have only 3 columns. And will it work? Will schema validation trigger? Let's try it and you will see a exception, a schema mismatch detected, right? So schema validation is in place if you try to add extra columns, even using insert into, and the error message will clearly report that schema mismatch is detected. This is your target table schema, 3 columns, and this is your data schema, which is 4 columns. So schema is not matching. So this is not allowed. That's schema validation is in place, and which is a good thing. Now, what if I try to override this table and insert 4 columns instead of 3 old columns? So this table has got 3 columns and we want to insert 4 columns. I don't care about the existing data. I want to insert new data overwriting the table. Is that allowed? Let's try that here. So here is a scenario where I'm trying insert override on the people table and trying to insert 4 columns. So schema is already there with 3 columns, but I'm trying to insert 4 columns, and I also want to overwrite the old table, delete it kind of, and then overwrite it. Is that allowed? No, that is also not allowed. A schema mismatch detected, and that's a good thing because it's a delta table, and delta table maintains different versions of the data. Even overwrite will create a new version of the same table. It's not like that we are dropping that table and recreating it from scratch. Overwrite is overwrite the existing table with a new version, and that's why we have an schema validation in place for overwrite also. And then finally, let's try to understand merge. So what happens when we merge and column names are not matching? So that's the scenario. So to test that scenario, I've created this select statement. So basically I have data in the people2.json file, which I'm reading this using this select statement, and I got ID, F name, L name, 3 columns, right? And I want to merge this into people table. That's my target. Will that work? It should work because it worked with the insert into, right? We know that column names are different. In the people table, we have column names like ID, first name, last name. And we are inserting 3 columns. Column names are different, but it worked with the insert statement, insert into. So it should work with the merge, right? But let's see if that works. No, it doesn't work. Cannot resolve first name in insert clause given that blah blah blah. Is error message is little different, but there is an schema validation in place. It throws an analysis exception and it doesn't allow me to insert into this table because the column names are not matching. So that's a good thing. It avoids potential data corruption problem. Ideally, insert into should also allow this kind of schema validation in place and stop us from inserting records where column names are not matching. But insert into allows that. Insert into works on the column position, which is a potential problem. But if you try to merge, it will throw an error, helping you to protect yourself from corrupting your data because you are inserting wrong values into wrong column. So merge statement comes with the schema validation for column names. Similarly, what happens if we try to add new columns in the merge statement? So let's say I have a people2.json file and I'm trying to read ID, F name as first name. So the column names are changed. I don't want to get column name validation error. L name as last name, those 3 columns. The problem that I had here, I have fixed those problems here in this SQL to match the column names, but I am adding one more extra column, which is date of birth, right? So can I use this select statement to merge data into the target table? So here is my target table. That's my people table with 3 columns. And I'm using this select statement, which results into 4 columns. First 3 column names, I've made sure they are matching. The last column is extra column. Can I insert it using insert star when not matched? Will it work? Let's see. It doesn't throw any error. So looks like it worked. But let's look at the table. What happened actually? Did I get the extra column? No, I still have only 3 columns: ID, first name, last name. I tried to insert this extra column, date of birth, DOB column, into this table using the merge statement because I am using my insert star. So everything should be inserted, but merge statement silently ignored the extra column and didn't throw an error. So that is also a potential problem in the merge statement. A schema validation is there in place for column names in the merge statement, but it silently ignores the extra column, doesn't insert it. So, which is half good. So that's about the merge. New columns are silently ignored. Now let's come to the data frame APIs. So in data frame APIs, what happens? So I have this scenario here where I'm creating a schema. Schema definition is ID, F name, L name, and I'm trying to read data frame, a JSON file, which is people2.json, using this schema and create a data frame. So this data frame will have 3 columns: ID, F name, and L name. And then I'm trying to write this data frame in the append mode using save as table into the same people table, delta table. So that's my delta table. So what I'm doing, I'm using data frame API to insert new records into an existing table, but column names are different. The table has got ID, first name, last name, but my data frame has got ID, F name, L name. Will this work? This worked in insert statement, right? Insert into allowed us to do that because insert into worked with the column position. But what happens if we try that same with the data frame API? Let's try that. A schema mismatch detected. And what is the difference? ID, first name, last name, and here we still have three columns, but ID, F name, L name. So column naming must match if you try using data frame API to insert new records or append new records in an existing table. So the problem that we had in potential problem in insert into is taken care of in the data frame API. So column matching by name works in the data frame API. Now last scenario, what happens if we try to insert new columns into an existing data frame? So here is the scenario. I am again reading data from the people2.json and I'm reading four columns here. First column is ID, second column is first name, then last name, and then DOB, right? So first three column names are matching in the target table, but I have an extra column here. Will this work? It didn't work with the insert statement also, right? So it should not work with the data frame API. A schema mismatch detected. So that's all about schema validation. Let's come back and quickly summarize what we learned because it looks like schema validation is little weird in delta table. Okay, so I've added a summary here in this notebook as a documentation. So what we learned that there are four approaches for inserting new records into existing table, and there are three scenarios for schema validation. So I've tried to summarize everything here. So with the insert statement, column matching by position is the way, right? Delta table will try to match column by position, not by name. So in some cases it is allowed if the column numbers are matching in the insert statement, but new columns are not allowed, right? New columns are not allowed to insert into an existing table. With overwrite, column matching by position is the way. So like insert, overwrite is also insert overwrite, so, right? So columns are matched by the position, but new columns are not allowed. Adding new columns are not allowed. That will throw an schema validation error. With the merge insert star, column matching is done by name. So column names must match and new columns are ignored. So we have a problem here and we have a problem here, right? It's not a very strict schema validation. In data frame append, which is kind of perfect, column matching is done by name and new columns are also not allowed. So data frame append mode is the best approach for inserting new records into an existing delta table because it has a full proper schema validation in place, which will help you to protect your tables from being corrupt or data being ignored without you knowing that some data is being ignored, right? So data frame is the best option here. And last thing is, what happens if data type is mismatched? So no matter what approach you are using, whether insert override, merge, or data frame append, data type mismatch is not at all allowed by any way in any of the approaches. I didn't had a example to show that because it works everywhere. So always remember that data type mismatch is not at all allowed. It's standard, it's strict. So that's the summary of the schema validation. You should always remember that insert has an exception here for schema validation. Insert overwrite also has an exception here. It's not very strict schema validation. Merge has an exception here. It's not very strict, but with the data frame append, schema validation is very strict. It doesn't allow you to corrupt your data or go things unnoticed. And that's all. But what if we have a requirement, right? What if we have a requirement to add new columns, right? Accept new data into our existing data table, and that's where we look for schema evolution approaches. So we have two schema evolution approaches: manual schema evolution and automatic schema evolution. So that's we are going to learn in the next lecture. I'll see you there. Keep learning and keep growing.